Frsky has really stepped up their game with a new Crossfire killer, the R9M module and the R9 Slim receiver. Can this really be the Crossfire killer that we hope for? Well, to be honest with you, I don't own Crossfire, nor have I ever used Crossfire. But what I can tell you is my experience that I've had with this. And I will be sharing with you the modifications that I did. And I will also show you how to update the firmware in this and also the receiver and how I have installed it in my Armor 10 Rooster. So stay tuned. Okay, one of the first things I want to point out really quick is on pre-order right now with Get FPV, you can get the Frsky R9M micro receiver, and this thing, going by the specifications down here, is super small, 16 millimeters by 10 millimeters and 1.1 grams. I've already pre-ordered one of these, and so I haven't got one here, unfortunately, to show you. But this is going to be the answer to a tight build like the Rooster. Unfortunately, right now, what I'm running is the R9 Slim. But anyway, let's dive right into it and let's talk about the module first. Some of the specifications here, if you click over here on the Frsky webpage, the voltage in, it's right here. It says 4 volts to 12.6 volts, but if you look on the owner's manual that it comes with in the package, you'll see right here 12 volts. And what they are meaning to that is 12 volts into here, not 12 volts what comes out of your compartment here of your Tyrannus. I'm assuming because it clearly says right here voltage range of 12.6 and the external power supply to be 4 to 12 volts, 2S LiPo. So that's the first thing I wanted to point out, is that the LiPo battery that you want to use with this here needs to be a 2S battery, which I have bought a couple of these Glacier battery packs to use with it. They're 1300 milliamps. I've ran all day long on this and one of these, and it ain't even gone under 4 volts yet. So one of those will last probably a week, I would guess. So one of the first things you'll need to do before we proceed any further is we need to update the firmware in the module and the receiver both. One of the things I want to caution you about the receiver right off is if we'll come over here and we'll click on the R9M, the products page. Hold on, let's go to modules, receivers, R9 series. And this is probably going to be true for pretty much all receivers. So if we click on here and we scroll down here to the specifications, and you're going to see this little part right here that says operating voltage range 3.5 to 10 volts. For the FC part of this, that's no problem. But where it does create a problem is when you flash the firmware in this. Are you running a 3S LiPo? If you're running a 3S LiPo, you are going to get 3S voltage out of here, which you could potentially fry your receiver. So you want to be really careful about the voltage that you're dealing with. If you're using the stock battery that came with the Tyrannus, you'll probably be just fine. But what I have done is I've taken this right here, and this is the plug that will fit into the receiver, and I have added a 5 volt step down regulator. So that way when I plug this into my Tyrannus using these plugs here to update the firmware into this, I don't have to worry about running too much voltage into this receiver. So anyway, back to the Frsky webpage here. The first thing you'll need to grab is you will need to come down here and to firmware, and you will need to update the firmware for your receiver. And the one that you want to grab is going to be this top one here for the module, and then you'll also need to grab the firmware for your receiver. Download these. You only have to do the top one. You don't have to do all these here, because the likelihood this probably has the newest firmware is a possibility, but just to alleviate any confusion, because as far as I know there's not any way to tell what firmware is currently on these. So we're just going to flash with the newest, and that way we don't have to worry about it. So you want to download those, save them somewhere on your hard drive, and here in just a second I will show you how to flash that. Okay, before we begin flashing the firmware, the first thing I want to point out to you is what it says. This is the owner's manual. Comes to the R9 Slim receiver. And down here, right here at the very bottom, right here in parentheses, right there, I don't know if you can see that, right there. What it says is OpenTX 2.2.1, and its improved versions are strongly recommended. So, if you don't have the newest version on your Tyrannus, or whichever radio you're using, you'll want to update that to the newest version. Okay, so now that you've got your firmware on your hard drive or on your computer here, the first thing we'll do is we'll turn our Tyrannus on. And one of the quickest ways to find out if you have the correct firmware is you're going to have this screen pop up. There's none of this fiddling with the trim switches while you turn it on. You just turn the radio on, you plug your USB, you're going to have that screen pop up, and we're going to pick storage. So once the storage pops up, we're going to dismiss this one screen, we don't need it. This screen here, where it says firmware, okay, I've already put these in here. You can see, all I did was I grabbed these two and I copied them into the firmware folder that's in your Tyrannus. That's all you got to do, is to copy those folders into the firmware one. Once you do that, then you'll just go ahead and eject your Tyrannus from your computer, and then I'll show you what we do next. Okay, we're going to do the easy part first. We are going to flash the module, and what you'll need to do is, the first thing you'll need to do is go into your radio setup for your model, and you'll need to key up to where it says, hang on, I'm in the wrong screen, let's try this again. Okay, there we go. We want to be right here, internal RF. We want to turn that off, okay? Then you're going to come down here and highlight that one to the external. And if you see, as we key through those, there's the JXT, DSM2, there's the Crossfire, the R9M, and you want to make sure that we have the FCC there. Okay, so once you do that, you'll come down to right here, and I only run the 8-channel setup. Oop, we went too far. 8 channels. Right there, because it drops in milliseconds. Okay, so now what we'll do is we need to flash the firmware. So now that we've done that, what it does is it turns on the module on back. And yes, this is not an R9M. I've already flashed mine, and I've just kind of shown you exactly what we do here. So then what we do is we're going to go ahead and back out of this completely, and you're going to hold in the menu key till you get to radio setup. Once you're in radio setup, you're going to one page until you see right there where it says firmware. That is the folder that we put, as you can see right there, if I can get the glare off. That right there is the 2 folders that we put in the Tyrannus SD card. So now I'm going to click down here, that's the R9M, and I'm going to, not rename, I'm going to select. I'm going to select it once, let me exit out so we show what we did. So menu, radio setup, okay, page, down to firmware, enter. Select the firmware for the module, enter. And then you're going to long press this here. If I can get this to right there. And you want to see right there, FCC. If you're in the United States, you want FCC. And then you're going to long press that. Now, this right here is where it's asking you to flash an external or an internal. You don't want to flash the internal. Even though this is basically inside the controller, don't confuse that. What they're saying by that internal is a 2.4 gigahertz module that's built in internally to the radio. So anytime you're flashing something into this bay, whether it be the module or the receiver, you're going to pick external. So when we click on that, long press, you can see it writing. And it's going to take a little bit. So we're just going to set it down and wait. Okay, once you're done flashing, it goes back to that screen and you are done with flashing the module. So if we go back to here, and like I said before, I know this ain't an R9M, this is just for demonstrating purposes only. So we're going to go back into the model, and if you look right there, 10 milliwatts. Whoop, key up. Select that, there's 100, there's 500, and there is the fatshark killer, the 1 full watt, which is why I believe they added the external ST30 connector for an external battery. Okay, so now that we've flashed the module, I'm going to show you now how to flash the receiver. Stay tuned. Okay, before we go any further, one of the things I want to point out is this little whip antenna that you get with the module here. Yeah, just like with most other whips, I tossed it and I bought none other than the TBS diamond antenna by Alex Grieve himself. This antenna works awesome. The specifications on this antenna, if you look, is 850 megahertz to 950 megahertz. Well, that just so happens to be in the range of not only the R9M, but also the TBS Crossfire, because they both transmit on 915 megahertz. The only catch to that is I've had to add an adapter, because this has the little pin like the antenna here, right here. And you have to have the little adapter here that's got the little plug-in part there so that your antenna will screw on and work just fine. So what we're going to do now is we're just going to real quickly flash this R9 Slim receiver. And what you're going to do is pull out the module out of your bay. And I have marked this in here, so if I can move this out of the way so we can see that a little better. I have marked that in there where you can see, maybe, right here. The bottom pin, right here, the bottom pin, I know this is hard to see. There we go, maybe that's it, there we go. The bottom pin right here, that is going to be S-port wire. The second one up from that, right here, is going to be ground. The next one up is going to be your voltage. Whatever cell or LiPo voltage you have here is what's going to come out of here. So that's why, again, I've made this connector here with a 5 volt step down, so that way I make sure I'm only getting 5 volts to the receiver. So what we're going to do, real simply, your wiring on the receiver is going to be like this. You're going to have the ground. You're going to have the VCC right there, and you're going to have the second one down, S port right there. So I use the red, the green, and the black. So now we know the green one is S port. Plug it in the bottom one. The next one from there is the black one, which is ground. Plug it into the second one up. And the last one, power, went to plug it into the, just like that. That's what we got. S port on the bottom, ground in the middle, and your power at the top. Okay, so now that we've got that connected, we'll turn on our Tyrannus.
Welcome to OpenTX. Throttle warning.
And you'll look right
Switch
away.
warning. Shit.
Turn that down. We got power to our receiver. You can see it flashing there. Okay, so what we're going to do, and the reason it's flashing is because if you look in the, when you set up your model, you're going to have right here, you're going to have R9M, the external. When you turn this to external, it automatically puts power to the back here. So this is why our receiver is flashing. If you haven't done this setup yet, your receiver won't be powered on, but don't worry about that because when you flash the firmware, it'll automatically come on. So what we're going to do, and I'm just going to go ahead and demonstrate this, we're going to go to a different model, and I'm going to turn off the external module. Like that. So now, see, we got no flashing lights on that. So what we're going to do now is just like before. You're going to go to radio setup, page once. You're going to go down to where it says firmware. Right there, firmware. Select. You're going to go down to where it says R9 Slim. Select. Select. Make sure you see the FCC there, because we're in the United States. We want to be sure and use the 915 megahertz with full telemetry, because if you're in the EU, you're not so lucky. So then we're just going to hold that in, and remember, flash external device, and you'll notice when I turn this on, hold that in, and you'll see the wire, or the LEDs blinking red and green as it's flashing. So we're just going to set this down here and wait for it to finish. Okay, and then you're done. You go back to this screen right here. At this point, you can just go ahead and exit all the way out. Turn your Tyrannus off, and go ahead and unplug your wires from the back from your receiver, and you now have your flashed receiver. Okay, this is for an upcoming build that I'm doing, but I'm going to go ahead and show you how to bind the receiver to your radio. Coming up. Okay, so I went ahead and stuck my module back into my compartment, and I went ahead and put on the antenna because I plan on powering this up. And as we all know, we don't power up transmitters without your antenna. That includes radios, not just VTXs. One of the things that I ended up doing, you know, of course we talked about running a 2S LiPo. Boy, that glare is horrible. Look at that. There we go. 2S LiPo. I 3D printed this little cool bracket that will hold my 2S LiPo. Just like that. And where that goes is it conveniently clips onto my kickstand, and it just clips on there. That way I can easily pull it on and off. I can stick my battery in here just like this. Turn the right way around, and then from there I just reach under and plug that in. It works perfect. But anyway, what we're going to do is we're going to go ahead and turn on our radio first. Turn all that down so we don't have to hear it. And I'm going to go to my correct model. Make sure we hit the right buttons. Up to the rooster. Here we go. And I'm going to select the model. Blah, blah, blah. Okay, so this honestly is just like any other Frsky receiver. You're going to have your voltage in, you're going to have your S bus, you're going to have S port, you're going to have your ground, and you're going to hook that up accordingly to whatever flight controller you're using. Just normal, same thing. It's not any different than RXSR. As far as the wiring goes, it's basically the same thing. I did end up printing this soft mount here at a TPU that holds these antennas. The way I did this, and I've been trying to do a lot of research on how you need to position these antennas for the best radio link so you don't have dropouts. And I've messaged Frsky, and what they told me is, as long as it's not against the carbon, they said pointing straight up is the ideal situation. They didn't clarify, you got on the receiver, you have this active in here, and then you have what I'm guessing is the ground. And in the TBS Crossfire, the Immortal T, or you see a lot of these positioned this direction. To be honest, I really don't know what I'm doing when it comes to mounting these antennas, but what I did, or at least what I was trying, is I put these at 45-degree angles, and these are just some hard RC antenna tubes. Got these off of eBay. They got 12 of them or 8 of them for like $6 or $8. Come with these little rubber tips that I can put on the end of it. But anyway, when I printed this out, or designed this tip right here for the rooster, or this mount, these are at 45 degrees apart, and the idea is my camera is roughly 20-25 degrees. That way, when my camera is straight on here, my antennas are going to be more or less pointed up kind of straight in the air. So that was my thought on when I designed that antenna. And I've been out roughly a mile and a half. I went straight out away from me like this with the antennas pointed to me. And believe it or not, when I yawed like this, I actually got better signal. And it's probably because when I turned, these were more, I don't know. But that's the way it was. I think at the mile mark, I was at like 90 RSSI or something like that. And then when I turned, it jumped up to like 94. No, I have no issues with Radio Link with this since I've installed it. The RXSR, it seems like I get a football field away and I turn just right, and I've got my alarms going off telling me I lost telemetry or the RSSI is low. Since I've installed this, I have not had any problems. There is an improved latency. There is no question. I'm not going to say it is as good as going from PPM to S-Bus, but it's noticeable. It's definitely noticeable. It seems like when I play back some of my videos that it seems like my reaction time is a little more on cue from what I see in the video. When you see something coming and you blurt the throttle, I mean, I can tell, just by my flying. But anyway, what we're going to do real quick is I'm going to show you how to bind this. And like I said before, just like any other receiver, there's just a different menu that pops up when you bind this. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to pull out I have a 12 volt power supply over here to where I can power up my copters on the bench, which I can't seem to find Yeah, found it. Here we go. I'll plug this into my power supply on the bench here. And it is hooked up to a smoke stopper. Always have a smoke stopper plugged in. Okay, so we're going to go back to the rooster here. We're going to select, but we need to select it. First, we're going to page over to, and you can see there, right there, there is the internal module is off. The R9M FCC is selected. I'm going to run channels 1 through 8. And there we hit bind. So we're just going to hit bind. Now, this is the screen that pops up. Channel 1 through 8 telemetry on, 1 through 8 off, 9 through 16 on, or 9 through 16 off. Well, we want S-bus, or I'm sorry, S-port. So we're going to run 1 through 8 telemetry on, and we'll just click it like that. And then your radio will do that neat little beeping it does. Set it down, push the bind button on the receiver, plug it in, take your off the button, power it down, exit out of the bind procedure here,
Telemetry lost.
and you can already see you got
recovered.
a bind. Now, as this thing is already saying, telemetry recovered, what we're going to want to do, and yes, this is powered on with my props, but my smoke stopper here limits the current, which these props will come on, but they will shortly shut off because I'm limiting the current here. But this shouldn't be an issue. One of the first things you're going to want to do after you've bound is you're going to want to go to your menus here, and you want to, we go here, menu, and you want to go, hold it in till you go backwards to the last page, which is 13, right there, 13. And what you're going to want to do is scroll up here all the way to the top of the page of 13. Maybe I'm on the wrong page. I'm on the wrong page, my bad. Page 12 of 13. And what we want to do is come up right here. Discover new sensors. Once you do that, all this you see that's on my screen right there, all that will pop up. At that point, your voltage and your alarms and everything else will start working, your S-port. So the cool thing about the R9M module and being the Frsky, you are still able to use your Lewis scripts. There's no fiddling about, no messing with nothing. If you previously were using Lewis scripts in this with your RXSR or whatever smart port telemetry receiver you were using, you can continue to use it. It's no problem. As you can see, I can we're going to, there's my PIDs, and there's my rates. Everything is there, and of course I've got the Mach 2 video transmitter, so I can adjust my power output and all that jazz. So Lewis scripts work, full control of the quad over 900 megahertz radio link with the new 9RM module. I'm really excited about this. I've been completely happy with everything so far. Super easy. I know the TBS Crossfire has where you can update the firmware over radio link. I don't know if that's something you can do with this yet. Maybe it's something they'll add. But to be all honest, the way I position this here, especially this one. Now, the Mini, when it comes out, it might be a little more difficult because you solder the wires. You solder the wires directly to the little, and it's it's going to be this size. That's the size of the new, and this is just an XM, but the size is comparable. But anyway, it's really easy. If I needed to, if you ever need to update the firmware, is to just take the little plug here, just plug it in there. You don't even have to take it out of the quad. You don't even have to unsolder nothing. There's just a plug right here. That's convenience to me. The price point is the ticket. The new, like we said, the new 9N Slim micro receiver is on pre-order for $10. The R9 Slim, this receiver here, is $25, and the module is $48. And if you don't know what a good deal that is, go price Crossfire. Well, that's going to conclude this video. I hope you enjoyed it. I hope you found it helpful, and we'll see you in the next one.